1 year on Mars is equivalent to 687 days on Earth. Approximately how many days on Earth are equivalent to 5 3/4 years on Mars? Let's go. Now, this problem is all about proportions. What we can say is that 1 year on Mars is equivalent to 687 days on Earth, and we can set up a proportion keeping the same units on the right side of the equation. Now, they're telling us we're trying to find out what is 5 3/4 years on Mars. So where would that go? Well, look at the left side. Mars years went on the top of the left fraction, so Mars years should go on the top of the right fraction. So we can say that 5 3/4 years on Mars should be equivalent to some number of days on Earth. And so we've got a proportion to solve. Now notice here, I'm not actually going to use the units in my math. I'm just using the units to keep track of putting things in the right places. So on the left, I've got years on top, days on bottom. By the way, I could have flipped that if I wanted to, but this is the way I did it. So on the right side, I have to keep years on top and get days on bottom. Okay, well, here we go. We've got the proportion set up. We've got to cross multiply to solve. However, here's this thing with this mixed number. Remember that mixed numbers are kind of all show and no go. Like, they're really good to see how much we're talking about, 5 and a little bit more, but they're not so good in the actual math. It's hard to multiply 687 by 5 3/4. What's a lot easier here is to turn this mixed number into a decimal in this case. And how do we do that? Well, remember that 1/4, think of money, is 0.25. So 3/4 is 0.75. So we could write this as 5.75 years on the top, and we'll put the X on the bottom. On the left side, we've got 1 year on top. We've got 687 days on bottom. Now notice I'm dropping the units because I don't need them to do the problem. I just needed them to set up the problem. Okay, well, now we can cross multiply this problem. We cross multiply to solve. 687 times 5.75. This is definitely a case where you want to use your calculator. 687 times 5.75 is, looks like that's 3,950.25. Okay. On the other diagonal, we have to multiply 1 by x. Well, that's easy. That's just 1x. So we've now got the solution that x is equal to 3,950 and a little bit more days. Now notice the problem said approximately how many days. So I'm not going to find this exact answer in any of my options, but I do see that 3,950.25 days is basically 3,950 days. So it looks like 5 3/4 years on Mars is that many days, which means C is our answer. And if you got it, good thinking.